If you've been watching up till now, good boy, you're now learning about narcissism. Today's video, we're going to learn what the narcissist is afraid of. Losing sanity. The question that should concern us is this: on what grounds can we describe the state of our culture as insane? Leopold Belak, the noted psychiatrist, psychologist, and psychoanalyst, makes the following clinical diagnosis of the modern social psychological condition.
If being crazy means having a hard time adapting to the world as it is, then society is crazy.
While I agree with his diagnosis personally, I don't agree with his reasoning. If the world we live in, that is, the world of culture, is unreal, then an inability to adapt would not be regarded as crazy. Narcissists are perfectly adapted to the world we live in. They subscribe to its values. They flow with its constantly changing patterns, and they feel at home in its superficiality. Those of us who have a sense of the past, who seek stability and security rather than change, and who have no faith in computer systems, have real difficulty adapting. It's disturbing every time the price of a common product changes as a result of inflation. So who is crazy and why? In courts of law, there is no such thing as, quote, a little crazy. A patient is judged either sane or insane. This decision is necessary to determine whether a person should be held responsible for a crime and sent to prison, or if a person should be hospitalized, maybe under a section. But this either-or position doesn't fit the common sense point of view, which recognizes that such things are rarely black or white, that people can be partly crazy, even if they seem to function rather normally. Narcissistic behavior falls into the considered insane self-destructive behavior as put forward by M.D. Lowen. What can we say about the nature of insanity? As I have already mentioned, overt insanity can be gauged by a person's lack of contact with reality, usually shown by a disorientation in time and space. Psychiatrists may then ask, do you know what day this is? Do you know who you are? Where are you? The inability to answer these questions correctly is rather clear proof of disorientation, of a loss of contact with reality, and therefore of insanity. But if a person is out of touch with his feelings, is he out of contact with reality as well, like the narcissist? If an individual is identified with his image or false self, as the narcissist is, does he really know who he is? If he believes that without power one will be used and humiliated, is he not a little insane? In other words, is there a degree of insanity in the narcissistic personality? There are a spectrum of narcissistic disturbances. That spectrum includes the paranoid personality, in which we find the presence of megalomania. But megalomania is not limited to paranoid individuals. It can be found on some level in all schizophrenics. A mental patient who believes himself to be Jesus Christ or Napoleon Bonaparte sees himself in the most grand terms. Every schizophrenic has an inflated self-image which is out of touch with reality. But isn't every inflated self-image unreal? And if that is so, isn't grandiosity itself an expression of unreality, and therefore a mark of some degree of insanity? What we can now come to the research question is this. If the narcissist is insane to some degree, and if the schizophrenic is narcissistic, what is the difference between them, and what relation do they have to each other? One criterion is that given by Belak, namely the ability to cope. The schizophrenic can't adapt or cope with his environment, whereas the narcissist can. Of course, his coping is on a superficial level, but on that level, it is effective and serves, therefore, as a hold on reality or a defense against an underlying insanity. This concept can be extended to all neurotics, since there is some measure of narcissism in every neurotic individual. This means that there is also an element of schizophrenia in all neurotics. However, clinical diagnoses are often based on the outstanding symptomology, with the result that schizoid and narcissistic tendencies that are in the background of the personality are generally ignored. To the degree that one's identity is based on an image, one is not in contact with the reality of one's being. In all other respects, the individual may appear to be oriented and fully in contact with reality, but there is in his or her personality a fracture, maybe only a hairline break that constitutes a tendency to insanity. As the degree of narcissism increases, the break becomes more pronounced, but it still lies below the surface and can be easily covered over. Thus, the spectrum of narcissism can be seen also as a scale of insanity. At one end are the phallic narcissists, whose behavior is so attuned to Western culture that their sanity would not be questioned. At the other end are the manifestly insane paranoid schizophrenics. In between are the narcissistic characters, borderline personalities, and psychopathic personalities. Let us now look at psychopathic personalities. At times their behavior can be so bizarre and so self-destructive that one readily questions their sanity. Yet on inquiry, one finds that they are fully oriented to the situation, their cognition is not disturbed, and their responses seem logical and convincing. The idea of an underlying insanity in the psychopathic personality is the thesis by Hervey Cleckley, professor of psychiatry, entitled The Mask of Sanity. His book contains a number of detailed case histories of persons whose behaviors are clearly psychopathic, involving lying, stealing, forgery, drunkenness, vulgar public display, sexual promiscuity, faking plane tickets to Germany, making fake YouTube accounts to stalk Taekwondo instructors in Germany, and fabricating your own self-importance and pretending you are certified by a student of Bruce Lee. The amazing thing about these individuals is that by talking and listening to them, one would not believe the documented record of their actions. They impress the interviewer as sincere, honest, alert, intelligent, empathic maybe, and perceptive.
Lenny has been on antipsychotic medication for a few weeks. He's had time to build up in his system.